this with both of them. I'll
Send it to Debbie. We would appreciate if you do it by Sunday,
By this year.
the ones I send you today.
Oh, right, yeah, I'll take care of those, but
I mean,
I'll have to.
I will find you.
I did, yeah, but I did it like
5-6 years.
next day. I never.
Not a problem, no tears. No, I was trying to be the president of the Browns.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one really
What they
expects me to
insist the
get
most,
under.
but we all
Exactly.
Yeah,
You have to treat.
Oh, you never know.
Very
you know it.
My grandson, but that's the one I asked about.
Wow.
So nice. Okay, everybody.
Impressive.
Yeah, I thought so.
Something small, but
Yeah.
Okay, so we have our
Okay.
final session today. Dr. Kris Lindbeck, we're going to be focusing on Elijah and some folk tales, as well as Elijah and the story of Passover, just to sort of get us in the zone and in the mode for when we meet Elijah again. So, Dr. Lindbeck.
Thank you very much. I'm going to tell a few folk tales about Elijah, and then I'm going to talk a tiny bit about Elijah at Motzei Shabbat, and Elijah at Passover, ending with a beautiful quote from a Reform rabbi, a woman Reform rabbi, as a matter of fact, like your Rabbi Lila, which is just about the end of my book, as you may remember, Rabbi Lila.
With you guys.
So sometime, if you have a chance, you could probably look it up on Safaria. You can look up all the original verses of Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, that you sing at Motzei Shabbat after the Eliyahu. Exactly. And because not only does it retell the whole conflict between Elijah and the priests of Baal on Mount Carmel, it has a verse, "Blessed are they who see you in a dream. Blessed is the one who receives a coin from your hand." And say what? Elijah, even in some of the stories in the Talmud, doesn't just give people advice or tell people what God's will or opinion is. Elijah also helps people out materially, and saves them from trouble, sometimes by appearing in disguise, which we didn't really have a chance to talk about last time. But it is those particularly helping out materially, and also saving from trouble, that made Elijah a beloved folk figure in medieval times. And I'm going to tell two Elijah stories that I am particularly fond of and enjoy. One is from a book written by a rabbi in Arabic called For the Consolation of a Friend of his who had recently experienced a loss in his family. And a lot of it is about how God's will is mysterious, but it's all in terms of stories. It's all these beautiful distractions. Some of them stories from the Talmud retold in Arabic, some of them which would be like, for them, like English is for us today. And some of them were folk stories told about Elijah that the rabbi felt were interesting and inspiring enough to include in his compendium of stories to cheer up someone who is grieving. And this one is called 7 Good Years. And in this one I will tell pretty directly, although in my own words. There was a family who fell into poverty, and the they had lost everything except one little plot of land, and the husband was off digging it up so he could plant. And someone came to him and said, you can have 7 good years. Do you want them now or toward the end of your life? And he didn't know who this person was. He said, go away, just go, just don't bother me. But then he came home and he told his wife about this, and she said, no, maybe it's not a con man. Maybe this is real. Maybe this might even be Elijah. And indeed, it was Elijah. So she said, if he comes back, tell him you want the 7 good years now. So he's off again working in the field, and Elijah appears again and says, well, what do you want? And he says, well, I've consulted, and we would like the 7 good years now. And he goes home wondering what's going to happen, and he finds that his children have found a buried treasure, and they have all the money they could possibly want and more. So they do everything you need to do with money. They fix their house, they buy decent clothing and food. The husband uses some of the capital to start a business that is going to make some money. And they also send their youngest son to school. And as he learns to read and write, the wife makes sure that a good chunk of that money, some of the original plus at least more than a tithe of what they earn in their new business, goes to feed and clothe people and help the whole community, both individually and collectively. And she has her young son practice his writing by writing down all of the donations that they give and every individual that they help. And at the end of 7 years, Elijah returns and says, right, your 7 good years are over. And the man says, well, just as I consulted with my wife to start with, I want to consult with her again. Elijah says, very well. So he goes home and says, Elijah's just returned. He says the 7 good years are over. And his wife takes the book that she has written with the help of their youngest child, and hands it to him and says, go show him this and tell him to ask God if he could find better stewards of wealth than us. And he takes it and he shows it to Elijah, and he says, please, my teacher and rabbi, go ask God if he could find better stewards of wealth than we have been. And Elijah, because Elijah can do that, goes and consults with God, returns almost instantly and says, she's right, sir. Keep the money. And that's it. That's where it ends. Just short and sweet. And the next story is actually a little similar, and this one I've added a few details to make it a tiny bit richer because I just love this story to pieces.
Hold on one second, Dr. Lindbeck, can you sort of share a little bit about what is the meaning, what is the essence of the story, and what does the story supposed to evoke from within us after hearing it? Because I think
7 good years. Actually, I'm going to throw that back to the group. What do you think when you hear the story of the what it means to be good stewards of blessings from God?
I've been a pretty bad one. I can tell you you're asking the wrong person.
I've got a notion. She wants to throw it out there and then be reflective. As she don't want to give us her opinion.
Right, I understand. Dory?
Well, I've been smiling since this class began because my late great father, who was absolutely wonderful, was very, he was really good with truisms. So for, like, if your home team was losing by a lot, he would say, it's time to say Kaddish. Or if something had a very low probability, he would say, well, when Elijah shows up, that'll happen. So this it has nothing to do with being kind or, winning lottery and then donating. Because I think a lot of people who maybe have humble beginnings and they become very wealthy, end up donating a lot of money, whether it's to temples or hospitals or other things. So I think that thing about starting with humble beginnings and then donating is kind of in truth of that story, the remix. But you can't see me beaming, but I'm beaming because I'm thinking about my father.
I can see you beaming, actually. I
Realize that, okay. I'm just thinking about my dad going, oh yeah, when Elijah comes, that'll happen, or, but
absolutely. And it's, when Elijah comes is, yeah, Thursday from never, but it's also something that you're expecting. And that's sort of that is the unexpected blessing and also the coming of the Messiah. Both of those are associated with when Elijah comes. And, in fact, that is, if you want to tell this story in a 20th or 21st century way, it would be, they won the lottery.
And then we have Cheryl.
Well, I think it's interesting that they taught the younger son to read and write. And his lessons in writing were listing the donations. So, it was sort of a double kind of good thing to do, because not only could he, obviously he was the only one who could read and write, but what he was writing was really significant. He could have written anything, but to have him write the donations, it taught him what they were doing with their money. And I think that's really important. I try to do that with my own children. I've tried so that they know, where our charitable giving is and the extent of it, because I think it's something that is just not assumed. You need a role model to do that, I think.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you to share your name with us.
Hi, I'm Lisa Tereski.
Hi.
I just joined the temple this year.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I walked in here late, I apologize. This is my first lunch and learn. I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to coming to my first lunch and learn. Can you tell me what this is about? I kind of thought it was gonna be a different topic every week, which is why I came today. I thought it would be.
So absolutely. So this is our final session in the exploration of the prophet Elijah from the rabbi's perspective. Our professor is Dr. Kris Lindbeck from FAU. She's actually here virtually with us. So you can see this is Dr. Lindbeck. We have been exploring Elijah from the lens of Rabbinic Judaism. And today we're focusing on a few folk tales about Elijah, and then culminating in Elijah and the holiday of Passover, where we most significantly experience Elijah personally. We're at our Seder tables, we open the door for Elijah, we have the cup for the prophet Elijah. And so we've been uncovering the deeper meaning behind prophet Elijah himself, and how our tradition understands who Elijah is and what Elijah offers to us today. So that's what we're doing. Every lunch and learn has monthly topics. So next week, we will begin another topic with Rabbi Larry Kota. And so that'll be a 4-part or 5-part session.
Okay, and how do people get the
Yeah, I can help you after the session, but you'll write your name on that list and we'll print them for you. And then when you come every week, you just grab your name tag and you join us at the table.
Perfect.
Wonderful. I'm glad you're here with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you, Dr. Lindbeck.
You're welcome. And
Okay, we have another question from Spencer.
when would this story have supposedly taken place? Because reading and writing was, very uncommon.
This is a very good question. My guess is that this story first appears in writing about the year 1100. And I suspect that it was first made up even earlier than that, because in the Muslim world, though just like in the Christian world, the Jews became more urban and literate by that point. It wasn't because Jewish occupations were limited by the Muslims like they were by the Christians, but because there was a extra double tax on land for people who were Jewish, which just naturally brought the Jewish community more to the cities. And so the idea that the man was an agricultural laborer and only the young son could write, that puts it, to my mind, probably more like, earlier, like before 800, or even before the Muslim period, which started around 700. And you're right. Later on, by 11 or 1200, most Jewish men and many Jewish women in that culture could write. They would write in Arabic with Hebrew characters. But probably when the story was made up, it was like you say, very few people could. More people could read, but fewer people could write.
Yeah, because teaching only the youngest son says something, especially when they're agricultural. I almost
Yes.
thought to go back to biblical times theoretically, because young men were occasionally taught to read in wealthier families. It was interesting, but they were.
Yeah, probably like more like the Talmudic times or early Middle Ages writing would have still been pretty uncommon. But good question, and in fact, retelling the story and saying it made me think about that exact thing. So, and I think that also, if you do win the lottery and you end up thinking, how can, after you have gotten the necessities and paid off your parents' mortgage or your own mortgage or whatever, how do you share this money with people who need it? You are more likely to be able to hang on to that money, rather than if you, or enough to live on, than if your attitude is how much fun can I have? What fantastic business idea can I support? Or how can I please everyone who asks? Anita, please.
Yes. Statistics show that if you win the lottery, 5 years later, you're broker than you are when you originally won it. So most people do not know how to control money. So I was struck by the wisdom of the wife in the story. The wife was the wise person here. She wanted the money and she had a path she could see how they could use the money not only for themselves, but to enrich their community. So give one for the wise woman.
Absolutely. Actually, that's a great lead into my next favorite Elijah folk tale. This one comes first time written down in Spain, not long before the expulsion, maybe the 1300s or the early 1400s. But I think I'm going to tell it in Poland because Jewish innkeepers were very common in Poland, and there's a Jewish innkeeper. Now I add a few details to this to bring it not up to date in setting, but up to date, a little bit more up to date in how we think about things. Later on, it was also told all over the world, so in different versions. So I'm not doing anything too different here. There was a poor widow who had 3 sons that she was barely able to support, and they were outside one evening in the field talking about saying that it was time really to leave home and make their fortunes, but they didn't know how to start because they didn't have much education. They could barely read. They didn't have any capital. So where would they go? How would they make it? And Elijah appears to them and says, I can help you. What do you want? And the oldest son says, I want to be fantastically learned. I have more schooling than my brothers, but it's not enough. And I want to truly understand the Torah and have a respected place in the community as a rabbi and teacher. And Elijah says, here, take this book, and anything you want to learn, you will learn easily, and you will know things that you didn't even know you knew. And he thanks Elijah. And he asks the middle son, well, what would you like to be? And he says, well, I would like to be wealthy and be able to give charity and support my mother and have everything that I need and never worry about whether I have food to eat and a roof over my head. And Elijah says, take this coin, and so long as you have this coin in your pocket, everything you do will prosper and you will be able to acquire the wealth you want. And then Elijah turns to the youngest son and says, what do you want? He says, well, I want to marry a really good-tempered, sweet, nice-looking girl. And the older brothers go, that's all? And he goes, yeah, I want to marry someone as good a person and as sweet as our mother is, but young and pretty. And Elijah says, okay, come with me. So the two older brothers go off in search of their fortunes, and Elijah and the youngest son go, and they drop by an inn, and Elijah begs at the door for food, and they're fairly kindly, but not with a great deal of attention, given some bread by the daughter of the innkeeper, and she is a stunner. The young, he's somewhere between a boy and a young man. I'll call him a boy because I'm 65 and I can. So the boy looks at her. He's like, wow, is she the one, Elijah? And Elijah looks at him and says, oh, no, she is not. I have heard from the chickens and the ducks in the dooryard that she is a mean person, capable of backbiting her friends and cheating her family, and you do not want to marry her. And he goes, okay. So they go on, and after a few days, they stop at another inn with a Jewish innkeeper. And there they are welcomed rather more warmly and given a full meal, not just a piece of bread. And the daughter of that inn is a perfectly nice-looking young girl. Nothing that special about her, apparently. But Elijah says, son, this is the one. She is really who you want to marry. And the boy goes, all right, okay, if you say so. And so Elijah goes on, and the young man asks for a job as a gopher at the inn, and he chops firewood and carries water and does stuff. And in the course of things, he gets to know the daughter of the innkeepers, and he sees that Elijah is absolutely right. She is generous and sweet and kind and smart, and let's just say that in a positive sense as well as a negative, it takes one to know one. She looks at him and she sees that he is honest and kind, and when he asks her if he can talk to her parents about marrying her, she says, yes, please do. So he goes to her parents, and her father is like, okay, I mean, he's hardworking, he seems honest, but we don't know anything about him. Not so sure about this. Our daughter could do much better. But her mother says, I have fed more than one beggar who had carefully patched clothing in ways that he or she couldn't have done it themselves. And they said that this boy's mother, who was too poor to give them money, barely rich enough to give them food, nevertheless took their clothes and fixed them. That is the kind of heritage, that is the kind of family I want for our daughter's husband. And the father said, okay, you have a point. So in a few years, when they were a little older, they got married, and they weren't fantastically wealthy and they weren't fantastically learned, but they made a living and they were very happy together. Fast forward a decade. The fellow who got a coin started out sleeping in the synagogue floor and running errands to build up a little capital. Within 6 months, he had a market stall. Within a year, he had a shop, and had married a respectable, good-looking, sensible woman. And 10 years on, he's traveling on business, and his wife is in their beautiful home. Elijah knocks on the door and asks, looking like an old beggar man, and asks for food. And the wife says, we give very generously to charity. Go to the synagogue and they will definitely have something for you. And he says, but I'm old and I'm lame. That's a long walk. And she just slams the door in his face. And he keeps knocking. And a maid opens up the door and says, didn't you hear what my mistress said? Go to the synagogue, and if you keep bothering us, we'll set the dog on you. Elijah said, okay. And then he went to the oldest brother who had received the book. Now, the oldest brother had gone to the yeshiva and aced the entrance exam and got a great scholarship. And within 6 months, he was a teaching assistant. Within 3 years, he was ordained as a rabbi and was one of the teachers of the yeshiva. He left there and became the senior rabbi of a nearby community, despite his young years. Married the very wise and learned daughter of one of his teachers, and lived in a pleasant, respectable house. Elijah does a bit of a sex change and appears as a poor widow and knocks on the door and says, I have no money, but my son needs help preparing for his bar mitzvah. Can your husband tutor him? And the wife says, I'm very sorry, but my husband's an extremely busy man with many responsibilities, and he's far too learned to serve as a bar mitzvah tutor. You'll have to go elsewhere. So Elijah walks off. Then he goes to the inn and looking again like a poor beggar leaning on a stick. And the youngest son's wife opens the door, welcomes him, gives him some water to wash up, sits him down, feeds him a lovely meal, asks after him, treats him in every way like an honored guest. And when the husband walks in from, I don't know, working in the stable, taking care of his guests' horses or something, Elijah says, you have definitely chosen the better part. Hang tight, I'll be right back. So he appears again at the wealthy merchant's house, this time looking like a very wealthy merchant, and says to his wife, "Ma'am, here's a document which shows that many years ago I lent your husband this coin. Can you find it and get it for me? It should be in such and such a place, at the bottom of this trunk." And she finds it and she gets it and she returns it. And as soon as the coin is returned, every single business venture the oldest son is embarked on go south, and his warehouse burns. No one's killed, but all of his main capital is destroyed, and he's facing poverty. Then Elijah looks like a very disguises himself as a very respectable, learned rabbi with an old beard, and goes to the wife of the learned son, the eldest son, and says, "Many years ago, I lent your husband such and such a book," and he describes it very exactly and tells her where to find it, and she gives it to him. And as soon as the book is back in Elijah's hands, the rabbi forgets pretty much everything except the alphabet. And then Elijah goes back to the family of the youngest son and says, the two of you have the greatest treasure of all, in that you love God and are happy together and do good for your community. Here is the coin so you can be really rich, and here's the book so you can be really learned too. The end.
This goes to show who you marry really makes a difference.
Yes, indeed.
And your wife is always right.
Yes, I have a feeling that Jewish women, I think Jewish men told this story, but I think Jewish women particularly love to tell this story.
Liliana's looking at me like, probably. I agree.
And so, but it's always, I find it interesting that it's a very common fairy tale theme to have some kind of magic thing that gives you powers. And what's nice about this story is, well, first of all, the Jewishness about the most important magic thing is the book, which lets you be a learned rabbi. That there's a very great, the Jewish value. That's wealth is important, but learning and the honor and respectability that comes with learning is even more important. And I think that the virtuous wife and the importance of tzedakah also makes this story extremely Jewish, despite its having a lot of common fairy tale themes. Not to mention Elijah, of course, who gets to appear in 4 different disguises 4 times. The idea of a poor widow asking for Elijah appearing as a poor widow asking the rabbi to help tutor her son comes from a version of this from 19th century Iraq, I think, or early 20th century Iraq, that made it into the Israeli folklore archive. So that wasn't my wrinkle. My wrinkle was actually letting the fact that the mother had mended the clothing of the beggars, and that the woman innkeeper knew that and convinced her husband to let them marry, and also gave the couple a little time to court. That was both modern touch and also realistic, because honestly, why would the girl's father and mother have let her marry this young nobody unless first of all, she really wanted to and was advocating for it, and secondly, they knew at least something about him.
I have a question. Isn't that a little bit like Rabbi Hillel? right, wasn't he the one that became learned at 40?
Mhm.
And he.
Yes.
No. Okay.
That's right.
So
That's
that
right, yeah.
Son is almost like Hillel.
There's certainly resonance. Any, so any more thoughts? And then I'll start to talk a little bit about Elijah at Passover.
I think we're gonna switch to Passover. I think before we launch into, I'd love for everyone just to sort of go around the room briefly and just share like, what is like for you, that moment at the Seder table before we prepare to open the door for Elijah, like what feelings sort of are evoked for you? Like, what do you start to think about around the Seder table? If you can sort of bring that, it can be from the enthusiasm and the excitement of the children are going to the door, but also for you, like, what is that moment for you? And why is that such an important sort of pivotal moment in our ritual of the Seder?
I feel it's optimistic, but I have a funny story and Rabbi Dan can verify it. So my son was very involved in the Jewish youth group. And Rabbi Dan has a very dear friend who they used to share holidays and Passover. They do one up here, one, I think it's Rabbi Allen is his name. And they're down in North Miami Beach. And so they had said to Houston, my son, oh, look, we're up here, come by, during Passover, come by, after dinner, something like that. And just as they are about to open the door, we ring the doorbell. And they were like, what? I don't know that the kids had told the parents, but the kids had said, hey, come to our house, or come up, and we live right up the street from them. And so they said it was really funny because just as they're about to either sing Eliyahu or, put the glass of wine out here the door opens and they were like, what's going on? So that but I always feel optimism when I open the door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
I recall one family Seder that we had. I had grown up with some pets or dogs, and when it came to become part of the Seder, when we would open the door for Elijah, we actually had our dachshund Heidi, which anyway act as Elijah. So somehow I remember that.
John came in.
Yeah. Well, from then, yeah,
Right.
fine, right. That's very fun.
We always had Seder with my aunts and uncles, so it was a big group, and of course, we used everybody's best dishes and glassware, and we didn't have a dishwasher. So, all the female cousins were responsible for doing the dishes because all the grown-ups would have had 4 cups of wine, with large cups of wine, and so they were not, my mother and her sisters just all relaxed in the living room with the men all went off, and so by the time it was time to open the door for Elijah, everyone was a little tipsy, I guess you'd say, and so the kids always opened the door and we would always laugh, like, do you think he's gonna come in? I don't think he's gonna come in. Is he gonna come in? Maybe he's next door, he could be up the street. Anyway, it was just kind of a really nice tradition and it was always fun. It was wonderful. Seders with big family groups are just terrific.
Yeah.
I was one of 5 kids and, my brothers, I was the girl and the youngest, and I just remember we had a long table. My dad was sitting at the end of the table and it was always a big deal, holiday and everything. And we had the wine, Elijah. And I just remember I remember when the door would open and it felt like mysticism or something, I guess is the word. But I can remember just staring at the wine and in my eyes, I could have sworn it was going down. And I thought, oh, look, he's drinking the wine, really there, it's disappearing. That's what I remember.
It's beautiful, thank you.
Passover is my favorite holiday. I somehow think that I was around for the first Passover, so it all kind of comes back. And whether I'm sitting at Passover table with just me, I have all the traditional food. I make it totally, kosher. Ideally, I can get some people to come over. Sometimes, they're not Jewish. And I remember having friends from Nepal, students that I was coaching, and they were into it furiously. They were, and I think for the days that followed, they wouldn't eat leavened bread. And I think I really touched them. In fact, makes me think for Passover, I'm going to ask them, and I live in California, how they're going to spend Passover.
Nice, beautiful.
That is beautiful.
For me, when they open the door, I feel that it's hope. And also I feel like you're reaching the whole world of Jewish people around the world that they're celebrating.
Beautiful, thank you.
So two things, most years, being in Connecticut, it's freezing at Passover. And so no one wants to open the door, we do it, but no one at the table, especially people near the end, wanna open the door. Granted, our house has a decent separation, so we don't really get that cold, but it's cold, we get some breeze. And so it was kind of something everyone dreaded. And it was not the kind of celebratory thing. Then I moved here, and for the first time I did Passover with a friend, Tara, and Ron and Ellen were there too. And when we opened the door, it was this beautiful day and a beautiful warm breeze last year, and we were all like, oh, this is so nice, we should have let Elijah in an hour ago. He didn't say that. That's kind of what it felt like to all of us. And the second thing's the wine. Growing up, we, to be fair, our Seder was about a half an hour of actual Seder. We never actually spent an hour. We did it this year with Tara, we didn't previous to my family. I don't know, whatever. But somehow, when they were cleaning up, even we had a very nice table, a very long, old, one of those family heirloom kind of tables. And for many years, we put this pad down, all this tablecloth to make sure we don't damage the wood. And every year they clean off the table, they remove the tablecloth, they get all the things off it, all the food, all the drinks, everything. And they'd always put the Elijah's cup back down with the wine inside it, no poster either. Every year someone would make sure that happened. And so they never let the kids see them dump it. And it was always really after the guests left and the family left, and very few people would be there before Elijah's cup would be empty.
Oh, that's beautiful, it's a beautiful story. So nice. And yeah.
Yeah, I have a few Passover with Messianic as well as the one with you guys. Was actually equivalent, same thing, eating and marinating. But in Messianic, they would have a dance to and all that. I remember one particular time, this woman moved away from David, which was where the Messianic is, and they were all the way in Naples. This particular Passover, she drove all the way back from Naples just to have Passover. So, well, there's some style. It means a lot to Jewish people, They're Protestant Jew. I don't know if she was a version or the version one, but of course, that's all I mean. So I was kind of intrigued that, hey, if she goes so far, then maybe it's a very enlightened thing to be a person.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone online want to share? Okay. All right, so please, if you.
Rabbi, what's yours?
I want to give her a little bit of time, and then if I'm at the end, I'll have time.
Oh.
Go ahead and share
Okay,
with.
can you
Thank-
share, let me share, please?
Oh. Yes.
So given we have a little less time than I thought, I'm going to just skip over Motzei Shabbat, but I'll actually, I'll put this up on the web and, I'll put this up on the web and I'll both put and I'll send the link to the synagogue. And if you'll let me, if you don't cut me off right away, I'll also just, as soon as I'm done, I'll just put the link also online. So as soon as we're done, at noon or at 1 or so when we're done. So one of the things that really surprised me as I was writing the book was to learn that Elijah's cup, although there's been Elijah's cup for almost 1,000 years, it does not appear in the traditional printed Passover Haggadot. It's not there. In fact, it's only in the last 150 years or so do rabbis who are commenting on the Haggadah say that some were accustomed to say Baruch haba, welcome, on opening the door to Elijah. So you might say that in terms of it's Elijah's cup and opening the door to Elijah has been in the Seder for many centuries, but in the Haggadah, that's new, starting in the late 20th century. I just found that really interesting. If you ask your average rabbi, and I think probably you learned Rabbi Lila can tell me if she learned this in school, think that the Elijah's cup was instituted because of an ancient rabbinic dispute about whether one should drink 4 or 5 cups of wine at the Seder. And traditionally in the Talmud, it says, when it says Teku, we don't know, that's actually an acronym for Elijah will come and resolve this at some point. So, Rabbi Lila, did you learn that in school?
I don't remember that piece.
Okay, well then it's maybe not, but I have heard.
No, but maybe
I was
so.
actually giving a talk on this at an academic conference, and a rabbi said, "Oh no, it's this. You should know that. It's obvious." And it's like, no, interestingly enough, not quite. This explanation came after the fact in the 1600s at the earliest, and when people had an Elijah's cup already for a long time. So, and no one explanation became the dominant quickly. So a Rabbi Chaim Benvenisti. Oh, actually, come to think of it, Benvenisti, I think, I don't know about I guess that's Italian rather than Spanish, but I think that means welcome. In other words, his name was Chaim. It was Life Baruch haba, Rabbi Welcome. Noticed that a few Ashkenazim connected Elijah's cup to the practice of not leaving any wine left over after drinking each of the 4 cups. So, because they didn't want to get tipsy like the aunts and uncles in the family story you were telling, they'd pour any leftover wine into an empty cup and call it the cup of Elijah the prophet. A century later, another rabbi relates that Elijah's cup to the announcement near the start of the Seder, all who are hungry, let them come and eat. Because he prepares 1 cup for a guest who will come, and they call this the cup of Elijah the prophet because we hope for this guest. Who could be more welcome at the Seder than Elijah? So we this cup is prepared for anyone to come. The practice of leaving of having a empty chair for a guest you hope will be here, or a supernatural guest, is actually part of folklore in the pre-Islamic, pre-Jewish Middle East. So maybe part of it comes from there, but that's certainly not part of Jewish tradition. Lastly, opening the door for Elijah, although it's generally a lovely family thing and kind of for the kids, comes right after a really, really difficult part of the Seder. And it was added in the Middle Ages when there were in the Ashkenazi world in Central Europe during the Crusades, when there was probably the worst violent the first and some of the worst violent anti-Semitism of the early Middle Ages, with whole communities being killed, and also the beginnings of blood libel. And so the rabbis collected a bunch of verses from scripture about how non-Jews had harmed and murdered, and calling upon God to punish them. And I don't know if any of you have used the Open Door, the 2002 Reform Passover Haggadah, but I really liked what Rabbi Sue Levy Elwell said about them. She thought, do I just want to leave this out? It's such a downer. It's so it sounds so violent. But she decided to keep it. But keep it and add it to it. So she still has, pour out your wrath upon those peoples who do not know you, for they have devoured Jacob and desolated his home. But then she said, she also then inserted, like combining and slightly modifying scriptural verses, she inserted a call for peace and justice, and for tzedakah, justice in the form of charity, to enemies as well as neighbors, to a call for goodwill to the whole world. And she concludes, when we stand at our doors and declaim these words, we become empowered as agents of change and messengers of peace. By dreaming a better world, we become partners with Elijah and with the Holy One in hastening a messianic time. I feel like reading that twice. Or would you like to read it, Rabbi Lila, instead?
To go to a meeting.
Oh, she had to run to a meeting. Okay.
Rabbi Lila had to step out.
Okay. She said something about finishing up in some way. Will she be stepping back or not?
No, she'll be gone, but I'll be here with you. You got about 7 more minutes.
Yeah, I know. So I just like that when we stand at our doors and declaim these words, we become empowered as agents of change and messengers of peace. By dreaming a better world, we become partners with Elijah and with the Holy One in hastening a messianic time. So that is the end of the PowerPoint, but I have more stories if you want. But I would also like to hear from you all. And I'll take a moment and ask you actually just any comments on what we talked about today, the history of Elijah's cup, opening the door for Elijah, the folk tales of Elijah, but also anything you learned about Elijah in this series of Lunch and Learns. And I will take a moment, I'll be listening to you, but I'll also take a moment to put my PowerPoint up as a open document on my Google Drive, which anybody can see, and I will put that in the chat, in the Zoom chat for all of you the 3 of you who are listening via Zoom, and also send it to the synagogue so anybody who wants to can get a copy. But first of all, I'm listening to you.
Did you leave something out when you were about Shabbat, Elijah? Was
Yes, I did. Do you want to hear some of that? Because I can share again and talk to that about a little bit. What would y'all like?
I'm interested in Shabbat.
Okay, I'll reshare right now. So, one of the things that is just so clear, and I liked it, is that, oops, actually, I should say, I was copying this kind of fast and cutting and pasting, but Elijah's medieval presence here and in the Passover Seder seem to have come from what ordinary Jewish families did, and then were later justified by rabbis with various learned explanations. So a scholar called Hoffman writes that welcoming Elijah is a folk tradition whose origins are completely lost to us. So even earlier than Elijah entered the Passover Seder, he says that he read a rabbinic responsum, a rabbinic official opinion in response to a legal question or tshuva, you might know it in the phrase in Hebrew, from before 1000, approving the popular practice of singing songs of Elijah on Motzei Shabbat. So people were singing Eliyahu Hanavi or something like it at the end of Shabbat, over 1,000 years ago. And somebody asked a rabbi, "Is this okay? Is this kosher?" And the rabbi said, "Yes, this is a good thing to do." And in the 12th or 13th century, the 11 or 1200s, cites a tradition in the Babylonian Talmud that Elijah will not come on Shabbat as herald of the Messiah, because that would mean, everybody would have to do all sorts of non-Shabbat sort of things, in order to welcome the Messiah. And Elijah too would have to travel on Shabbat, and therefore he will arrive. When the Messianic age arrives, it will come immediately after Shabbat, when the time is right for redemption. So this is probably also certainly an explanation after the fact, but it's a nice connection. Then after that, when quote unquote everybody knows that Elijah appears after Shabbat, we find a tradition that Elijah sits under the tree of life in Gan Eden, recording those who keep the Sabbath, and the merit of keeping the Sabbath will bring about redemption for Israel. So we have Elijah appearing, Elijah kind of ushering the community into the weekday, and there's a word, kind of a 50-cent, $5 word, liminal, that I like, meaning it's from the Latin word for doorstep. Elijah is and it means something that is between. A liminal moment is a bar or bat mitzvah, where a person is between childhood and, in some senses, adulthood, or between childhood and teenage years, where they're responsible for themselves, start to become responsible for themselves. And one of the things about liminal moments in all folk traditions is that they're both good and also a little dangerous. And you break a glass at a wedding, not just in memory of the destruction of the temple, but also because of a very ancient custom that there has to be a little something go wrong at a happy time, just in case, you know. And so Elijah comes to protect a family, and back in the day when most Jewish families, like most any families, were living kind of hand to mouth, Elijah sort of cushioned the transition between a time when all Jewish families had enough to eat and no worries to a weekday where they were scrambling to make a living. And so Elijah himself is a liminal person because he's partly human and partly angelic, and he also transitions between, travels between heaven and earth, and he can speak face to face to God, and he can also speak face to face with any human being, possibly in disguise, possibly not. So that's the whole PowerPoint. You've got it now. And I'm going to take a moment and
I have a question. How did you get interested in Elijah?
Oh, it's a funny it's a good it's I will actually just answer this question in a moment, but hold on, I'm trying to okay, now I'll answer the question first, and then when I'm done I'll get it up online and put it in the chat. So just don't cut me off for like 2 minutes after we're done, Ron, please. I got interested in Elijah because I have to go back a little bit longer than that. My dad of blessed memory was a seminary professor, and I was a Christian kid who basically learned nothing about Judaism when I was growing up. Like, you know, Jews are good citizens. It's wrong to be prejudiced against Jews. What's Judaism? Duh. I didn't even have any practicing Jewish friends, so I'd never even been to a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, which in the New York area or South Florida, most non-Jewish kids have. So I started to learn Hebrew. I went to Ulpan near Jerusalem. I talked to a lot of Jewish folks, and I was immediately and totally fascinated. And this process led me to majoring in Jewish studies in college and going on and getting a master's in rabbinic studies at Jewish Theological Seminary, and then doing a doctorate in ancient Judaism with a concentration in the Talmud. And a sub-concentration in early Christian stuff. And there was a lot of stuff. I took many courses in Judaism and 2 courses on the New Testament. And one of the things that I learned is that Jesus tells a lot of parables, which are stories with interesting reversals and changes in them, and often support the underdog and are often very surprising. And a lot of writers, some in an anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish way, others just matter-of-factly, point out that the mashal, which is translated parable in rabbinic literature, where you translate a Bible verse by talking about God as a king, is just nothing like Jesus's parables, which are much more informal and are not related to specific Bible verses. Like one of the most famous mishalim is like, God is like a king who has, for some reason, sent his queen away but not divorced her, and she comforts herself by reading and rereading her ketubah, in which case the Torah is her ketubah. But so I think, well, I thought, okay, so that's not like those New Testament parables, but what is? There, I swear there are stories that I have read in the Talmud which are surprising and very lively and very everyday, and often support the underdog. And oh, they're the Elijah stories. And then I got all of them. There are basically about 40 stories about Elijah in the whole Talmud. And I read them and I kept reading them. And I said, I want to write my dissertation about that. And writing my dissertation about that led to publishing a book on it. It was, that's what got me interested. So that's a fairly long story, but I kind of had to start at the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's really been, I've really enjoyed this, and I appreciate, and Ron, thank you for you did a great job today with the camera, pointing to everyone who was speaking, so I got to see everyone.
My pleasure.
And Anita, that looks like a fantastic Afghan. I crochet too, but I rarely have the patience to, I've only done one Afghan. They're just too, and that was a baby one. They're just too big for me. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn off my audio and video, but I will upload, I'm going to keep Zoom open. And if you want to get the,
I don't have, I have it.
and get the, get my PowerPoint into chat.
We'll figure something out, it'll be, we're over somewhere in Meisner or whatever, nearby.
It's the part, and that's a believing rabbi. It's actually great. We're actually never
This time of day on a Tuesday.
the rabbi walk out on us.
How you want to- Where you live?
No, I west.
Where do you have to go?
Probably your average amount.
You know, I have it like 30.
20 pounds.
Another time.
Thank you, Chris. Have a nice day.
Catching up after a couple of fully recovered. Surgeries all went well, she's gonna be fine.
Okay.
You know he's bored if he's like, you wanna go for
Absolutely, I'm with you.
Can I? I have to, just say.
I wasn't expecting you.
That's okay.
Ron, if you could copy the link from the PowerPoint onto your laptop if you want, I'll also email it to Anita.